Okay, good morning, friends. Thank you very much for your patience. Be'ezus Hashem, I hope it will have paid off. We know that this series that we do on Erev Shabbos, we called it Pesacheinu Megadim. We connect the beginning of the Parsha to the end of the Parsha. The basis of it is an idea in Masechta Pesachim that when it comes to brachos, the beginning of a bracha and the end of the bracha need to be similar. It's called psicha me'ein chasima. They have to start and end in a similar way. So we figured if that's a rule that applies to brachos, presumably it applies to the Parsha. There must be connection between the beginning and end of the Parsha. And I would say so far so good, right? We're up to Vayakhel, so far so good. I met Rav David Cohen, the Rav of Gvolyavitz, and I told him about this theory, this procedure of Pesacheinu Megadim. I said, is it a valid idea? He said, is it valid? Well, you have anything to say? Have you found connections? I said, yeah, I'm up to, I think at the time, Mishpatim. So far, so good. So I said, could we say it's a valid form of drush, an authentic form of drush? He said, no. I said, no? He said, it's not drush, it's pshat. He said, it's pshat. That's what he told me. And I'm going to take that for whatever it's worth. So this week, trying to connect the beginning of Vayakhel to the end of Vayakhel, I humbly assert this is the best one we've had so far. It will revolutionize your understanding of Truma and Vayakhel. And I'll tell you that I didn't have anything to say for a very, very long time. I worked on this for part of the day yesterday, and including very, very late. I messaged my friend Rabbi Zachariah Holzer, and he gave me some good direction. And then I worked on it very hard. Here we go. Okay. At first glance, Vayakhel seems to end the exact same way as Truma. Vayakhel ends v'chol hayisedos l'mishkan, all the pegs of the Mishkan, v'lachatzer, and for the courtyard, saviv nechoshes, meaning all the pegs that held down the Mishkan and the Chatzer were copper. Fine, that's the end of the Parsha. Truma ends basically the same way. L'chol klei ha-Mishkan, b'chol avoidasai, all the vessels of the Mishkan, all the services, v'chol yisei doisav, v'chol yistois ha-Chatzer, nechoshes. And I'm looking at this pasuk, like, what am I going to do with this pasuk? That all the articles of the Mishkan were nechoshes. And then it dawned on me, the way Truma ends, there's a very big difference between the way Truma ends and the way Vayakhel ends. Truma ends with one important detail. That detail is, L'choyel klei ha-Mishkan, all the vessels of the Mishkan. Now what does it mean, all the vessels of the Mishkan? It doesn't mean the kalim of the Mishkan were all copper, the aroin wasn't copper, the shulchan wasn't copper, the menorah wasn't copper. So Rashi says a chidush noira. I never really thought about it until this year. Rashi says, L'chol klei ha-Mishkan shahayud tzrichin lahakamasai ulahairaydasai kagoin makavos litkaya yisedos amudim. Any vessel that was needed to build the Mishkan, to knock in the pegs, to knock in the screws, needed to be copper. Did you know that? I don't think it ever dawned on me. I never realized that when you build the Mishkan, you can't just build gold, silver, and copper kalim. Your toolbox, lahavdil, Trump presented Netanyahu with a golden pager, right? A golden pager. I think Netanyahu gave Trump a golden pager. Yesterday, I think Netanyahu gave Fetterman a silver pager. If you're Trump, you get a gold pager. If you're Fetterman, you get a silver pager. Lahavdil, Elef Alfei Avdos, when we build the Mishkan, it's not enough that the kalim themselves are made out of fine material. The tools have to be made out of fine material. I really never realized this until this year. Rashi says that's learned from the pasuk L'choyel klei ha-Mishkan. It's a very big chiddush, right? When you build the sukkah, you don't need to have special tools. I'm surprised the Judaica stores haven't marketed yet the toolbox for the sukkah. You could put your kid's name on it. You could give it as a bar mitzvah gift. The toolbox for the sukkah. You never heard of such a thing. Ilan, when we were in Joburg, we went to the shofar factory. They don't have special tools to make the shofar. You see what's going on over there in the shofar factory? They have, it's in a, not a very pleasant environment over there. They're not so careful with what kind of tools they use to make a shofar. Yet for the Mishkan, they had to use special tools. I found that Rav Yaakov Adas, he's a Mekubal in Eretz Yisrael, he wrote a Sefer Divrei Yaakov. He says, what would happen if somebody would use a regular hammer to build the Mishkan? Would he be over an asay? Would it be puzzle? He said, I haven't seen anything on this. But I would add, how come none of the poskim bring down? The Rambam doesn't bring down. Nobody brings down. You have to build the Mishkan with special tools? What, they argue on Rashi? Do they not accept this interpretation? But moreover, the real question that plagued me was, why is the requirement to use special tools to make the Mishkan omitted from Parshas Vayakhel? Did you notice that? Truma ends, all the pegs have to be copper, and even the kalim used to make the Mishkan has to be copper. And in Vayakhel, that's omitted. It doesn't say l'choyel klei ha-Mishkan. It doesn't say the tools used to build the Mishkan were copper. Why? Why? So Reb Zechariah Holzer sent me the Perush of Reb Chaim Paltiel, that Reb Chaim Paltiel says the word v'choyel in Vayakhel, when it says v'choyel hayisedos, it includes even the hammer has to be copper. The question though would be that, can that really be the case? Does the word v'choyel really include the tools? It says the word v'choyel in Truma as well. It says v'chol yisei doisav in Truma. And yet the pasuk had to say l'choyel klei ha-Mishkan, which included the hammer. So how could you say the word v'choyel includes the hammer when in Truma it had to say an entire phrase to teach the hammer? Unless you say, once we have a full phrase in Truma to include the hammer, then the one word in Vayakhel includes what we already said. Okay, however, I found Tosfos asks our question, okay? The Tosfos HaSholem asks, why is it that in Parshas Truma, the Torah says that not only the vessels have to be copper, the hammers have to be copper? Tzarachiyim, Tosfos says, why this detail is omitted in Vayakhel, okay? And I was wondering, somebody's got to answer the question. And I looked and I looked and I asked, nobody answers this question. That if you learn like Rashi, that l'chol klei ha-Mishkan teaches me the hammer has to be copper, why is this not mentioned Vayakhel? And starting very late last night, culminating even later, Hashem sent me a great gift. This is Oyoim V'Noira. You ready? This is really good. I want to share with you a number of nuances of difference between Vayakhel and Pekudei. You know, between Truma and Vayakhel. You know, in Truma, when it says that, remember the lula'is? You had these curtains, and each curtain, on one side you had these loops, and on the other side you had something for the loop to catch on. When you attach it together, it says, Isha el achoisa, one woman to her sister. Or by the Krushim, it says, Isha el achoisa. Whenever it talks about things fitting together, it says, a woman and her sister. In Vayakhel, it drops all that poetry, and it just says, Achas el echas, one to one. Did you notice that? I never noticed it before last night. In Truma, it will always say, when you're putting pieces, like Lego, you put one together, it says, Isha el achoisa. By the way, they have new Haggadahs. So, besides my new Haggadah in Spanish and French, I saw they have a Lego Haggadah. A Lego Haggadah. It's called Let My People Go, with the L-E and G-O in the Lego, in the Lego logo. Right? So, they're new Haggadah. So in Parshas Truma, it says Isha lachoisa numerous times. In Vayakhel, it says Achas elechas. Okay? Why? Next question. In Parshas Truma, who makes the Mishkan? Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar. Hey, where's Betzalel? Where's Uri? No. How many times is Betzalel mentioned in Truma? He's not. All of a sudden, Vayakhel, Re'ei Karasi B'Shem, meet Betzalel. We have like this dramatic intro to Betzalel. Why wasn't he mentioned in Truma? And what I was wondering about, in Parsha Truma, V'asuli Mikdash, when? On Tuesday? On Shabbos? Doesn't say. Comes Vayakhel. It starts off. Vayakhel Moshe Zeh Hadavar Sheishes Yomim Shabbos. What do you mean you have to make the Mishkan? Not on Shabbos. Why wasn't anything said in Truma? Rabbi Shua Heller wrote a little compendium called Oyhel Yehoshua. He says that, there's a machlokes Rashi and the Ramban. Are these Parshas in order? Are they not in order? Rashi says they're not in order. Rashi says first came the Cheder Egel, then came the command to build the Mishkan, then they built the Mishkan. Because if first came the command to build the Mishkan, and then they served the Egel, then Hashem would have said, never mind, don't make the Mishkan, I don't want it from you. So Rashi says the Parshas are out of order. The Ramban says, no, it's in order. They were commanded to build the Mishkan, they served the Egel, and then they built the Mishkan. Says Rabbi Shua, and by the way, the Zohar says like the Ramban. Says Rabbi Shua Heller, yeah, we'll go like the Ramban, but even though the command to build the Mishkan came before the Egel, after the Egel, things changed. It was a different Mishkan. What were the differences? Rabbi Shua Heller says, Oya Menorah. He says that before the Cheder Egel, the relationship we would have with Hashem through the Mishkan is Nesuin, full-fledged, consummated marriage. Not so after the Egel. After the Egel, our relationship was downgraded to engagement, Eruvin. Before the Cheder Egel, Moshe was going to make the Mishkan. Betzalel would not get involved whatsoever. And Moshe, through his Kedusha, would have elevated the Jewish people, that the relationship was one of Nesuin. It would have been Isha el Achoisa, one woman to her sister. Our bond with Hashem would be like Isha el Achoisa. Nesuin, full-fledged marriage. Betzalel would not have come near the Mishkan. After the Cheder Egel, Hashem says, Re'ei karasi b'shem. Well, wait a second. Yes, I still want the Mishkan. We got to tweak it a little bit. Now, Moshe, you're not doing this. Now Betzalel is going to do it. And if Betzalel does it, it's going to be on a lower level. It's going to be on a lower level. I don't want you, Moshe. Only Betzalel and Uri. And it's not going to be Ishal Achoisa. It's going to be Achas Elechas. Now, then I'm wondering, could it be that originally, when the command was given to build the Mishkan, it would be even on Shabbos? And now that the Mishkan was downgraded, now they can't do it on Shabbos? Because it's not so strange to say you could build a Mishkan on Shabbos. You bring a carbon tamid on Shabbos, you bring karbanos on Shabbos, of course you bring it. Look in the first Meshech Chachman Vayakhel. There, sure enough, he says, he gives a hezber, but whatever the hezber is, he says, in Shruma, before the Cheder Egel, Hashem said build the Mishkan. He didn't say a word about Shabbos. You could build it even on Shabbos. After the Cheder Egel, Hashem says, it's very nice, I still want a Mishkan, but I don't want Moshe building it. And it's not going to be Isha Lachoisa, so therefore the intro is Shabbos. Now, that means Vayakhel begins, keep Shabbos, meaning don't build a Mishkan on Shabbos. What does that indicate? The Mishkan changed. It's not the same Mishkan as before. There's no Moshe. It's not Isha Lachoisa. I would humbly suggest, based on the Oyel Yehoshua, to answer Tosfos' kasha, that even though in Truma we have a special din, that not only do the kalim have to be copper, you even need to use a copper hammer. Not so in Vayakhel. No more copper hammers are needed. Copper hammers were only needed when Moshe built the Mishkan. When the Mishkan was on the higher level of Isha Lachoisa, when the Mishkan was even Doicha Shabbos. If it's not Doicha Shabbos, you don't think he could use a regular Phillips screwdriver? Why not? So to answer the question of Yaakov Adas, how come we don't find any of the poskim say that to build the Mishkan you need to use the copper hammers? The answer is because you don't need to use the copper hammers. That was a requirement in the first order, but it was tweaked because of the Cheder Egel. So the beginning of Vayakhel and the end of Vayakhel are first of all very connected. Vayakhel begins, now you can't build this on Shabbos. This denotes the lower level of the Mishkan, and that's connected to the last pasuk of Vayakhel. The last pasuk of Vayakhel is the kalim need to be copper. Hey, what happened to the hammers? No, the hammers don't have to be copper. It's a new kind of Mishkan. Now, the reason why this is so beautiful is not only do we connect the beginning of the Parsha to the end of the Parsha, but there's a rule that the beginning and the end of something reflect of the essence of the subject matter of the whole Parsha. So the beginning of Vayakhel and the end of Vayakhel, the beginning is this Mishkan is not Doicha Shabbos. The end is you don't need to use copper hammers. That reflects, don't think that you're coming to shul this Shabbos just to review everything you read a couple weeks ago. No, it's a different ballgame. It's a new story now. Now, Rabbi Yeshua Heller uses this to answer other discrepancies also. For example, in Truma, as opposed to Vayakhel, it says Shnei Kruvim or Shnayim Kruvim. And we have to look again. But one denotes a pair. There are two ways of saying two. You could say two as a paired couple, or two as two separate items. You see, in Truma, we were Oisin Ritzon Shalmakim, so the Kruvim were facing each other. So we use the word that denotes a pair. Vayakhel, it's a downgrade, so we don't use a pair, we just say two items. So Rabbi Yeshua Heller has an amazing presentation, and I think based on what he's saying, it would come out a very nice answer to our question, Tosfos' question, why the hammers are not mentioned at the end of Vayakhel, and it would also explain why halacha l'maisa you don't need to use these special hammers. So far, my vote is this week has been the best. Okay, that's just my opinion. Okay, that's Pesacheinu Megadim Vayakhel. It's only one. Usually we have a bunch, but I think it did the job. Okay, that's first offering for today. Shkaya.